You're listening to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Episode 35 with Christian Howes. Welcome to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. I am Charles Laux, your host. Today we have an extra special guest, someone who I've known for quite a long time and have always been inspired by Christian Howes. Christian Howes is a violinist, composer, educator. He is probably one of the foremost violinists of our time in what we would call the alternative styles. And he's been doing a lot of great work with classrooms, getting teachers and students started with being creative string players. So really excited for today's episode. Without further ado, here we are with Christian Howes. Good morning.
Morning, Charles.
How are you?
I should say Dr. Laux.
That's totally cool. That's totally cool. How have you been?
Good. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Glad that you're here. I appreciate you coming on today and, sharing some things with us and, always inspirational, definitely for me. And I know a lot of students out there, we're always just enamored by what you do and how you do it and, just that creativity element. So I appreciate you being here and sharing that with us today.
I'm excited. I love to connect with the classroom teachers wherever I can. I've been doing ASTA for like 15 years for that reason, and have traveled to many middle school and high schools, probably hundreds of districts around the United States in the last 20 years, doing clinics. Of course, not doing as much live stuff like that now, obviously, but
right.
Trying to find as many ways to interface on Zoom with the classroom teachers. And it's always, for me, it's always kind of like I'm toggling back and forth. Wait, let me get some quality time with the classroom teachers, see where they are. Then, working with Suzuki teachers in their world, or
right.
private teachers, whatever it might be, which is a kind of their different issues, concerns. And then I work with a lot of adult amateurs, a lot of college students, teenagers also. So kind of a lot of toggling back and forth between those worlds as an educator for me, and trying to figure out how the methods or the methodology and curriculum that I develop, how it can actually apply and continue to evolve and be useful for the people in these different spheres, because they all have different needs. So.
Yeah, everybody has different comfort levels and that as well. So, I think a lot of us, including myself, have gone through our teaching and never had, a lot of improvisation or any improvisation or any kind of creative, way of playing. We've always been, note readers and following the page. And I think that's a big part of education that a lot of us have missed. So there's some hesitancy by some of us out there to want to put ourselves out there and learn something new and be able to go outside of our box, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, and I think, for me, what comes up is just like the framework that we use to have the conversation itself is tricky because, for example, I think a lot of us are tempted to want to, it's like, how do we have the conversation? A lot of us are tempted to talk about it from a standpoint of learning different styles. And it's like, you can have that conversation, like, how do I learn bluegrass? Or how do I learn, popular music, or in this situation or that situation? But I wonder if it's more useful to think about it, instead of thinking about different styles, to think about elements of musicianship that are, I don't want to say the word the same, but fundamental to many situations and styles. Because I think that one of the thoughts that people in classical music in general are having more is this idea that we're siloing music education, that we're somehow segregating
Hmm.
different worlds. Like, well, if you want to do jazz, you go over here. If you want to do classical, you go over there. If you want to do quote unquote participatory music of other different cultures, then you go over there. And it's like, well, is there a way to not have it be that? Is it so? For me, I've been searching to figure out how to think of that, but also how to help, especially classroom teachers, to think of it. Um, and so, one of those elements for me, if we just break it up in higher categories, like bigger chunks,
Hmm.
would be just the creative process itself. There's
Okay.
whether it's improvisation, arranging, or composing. So, and this is, I think a lot of the states now have this as kind of a suggestion, hey, or mandate or whatever they call these
Yeah,
things.
it's in the standards, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the standards, right? And so it's like, if we really treat it like its own thing, um, just the creative process. How do we nurture that? How do we catalyze that for individual students? So I've done a lot of thinking about that. And then there's these other aspects of functional musicianship, which could be like the rhythmic construction, the harmonic construction of
Hmm.
different music.
Yeah.
And so I think these three ideas that I just mentioned, like, in other words, a creative process, creative activities, internalizing grooves and internalizing harmony. I think this is another way that we can talk about it, because then that will apply whether you're trying to learn Appalachian music, whether you're trying to go into worship scenarios,
Hmm.
whether you're trying to make YouTube covers of pop songs,
Yeah.
or jazz, or any stylistic scenario. If
Yeah.
we look at kind of the what is in common across
Hmm.
all the different styles for these three things, and then of course there's the challenge of how do we present that in a classroom setting for kids,
Right.
whether live or remote. So I mean, I'd be happy to share some of those ideas if
Absolutely.
you're open to it.
We would love
Um,
it.
so first of all, for the creative process, and a distinction I like to share with my students and with teachers is the idea that well, there was a book by, I think, Daniel Kahneman called Fast Thinking and Slow Thinking. Slow thinking, fast thinking.
Okay.
And the idea is that for things that we are an expert at, our brain moves really fast. So, like, if you pick up the violin and play it right-handed, then if you want to see what it feels like to play slow, try to do it left-handed, right? And
Absolutely.
same thing like with chess. Like, you've got to play 100 games of chess before you know how the pieces work, let alone you can be like really creative or like plan ahead. And so for music, I like to keep creativity and learning separately. So creativity can be a fast thinking process if a couple things happen. So one of those things is we want to give students or ourselves super, super clear limitations, instructions, actually. Think of it as like a math class. It's like, here's how you do this multiplication problem. Go do 30 of them, and then we're going to go to the next variation.
Right.
And if we put kids in a situation where improvisation is involved, but we literally give them these very limited choices and very clear instructions, you can only choose between this and that. And what I typically see, and a lot of this comes from the jazz studies canon, will come down, is not to disparage that canon, which I also am part of, but I think it also can have its own pitfalls or places to grow. But a lot of times, what will happen is a teacher will come into, let's say, an orchestra class, and say, okay, I'm going to teach you this blues scale, and I'm going to show you this swing rhythm and this blues form. Okay, so now you got all that. Okay, now just play whatever you want from that pentatonic scale. So here's what's missing. There's not as, first of all, there's too much unknown to the student. They don't know the pentatonic scale well enough yet. Even though they just learned it, that's like us taking music theory but that doesn't mean we can apply those chords on our instrument. There's a difference
Right.
between learning the theory and
And
feeling
applying it.
yeah, and applying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. It's like, wait, and also swing rhythm feels unfamiliar, and there's this song of playing on blues that might feel really unfamiliar, right? So it's all well intended, and it's all great. Like there's a lot of great aspects of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like we want to teach the blues, we want to teach swing, we want to teach the blues scale. It can be useful, but then when you set up that kid and you say, okay, now play whatever you want, then the kid might have a fail experience.
Yeah, they're just overwhelmed.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can speak to this in a way that, from your own experience, in ways that I wouldn't even know, because you're in the classroom every single day, which is why I love having these conversations. So, so what we want to do instead is we want to give very clear instructions. And we want to make sure that the instructions we give to that student are within something they already know, like the back of their hand.
Yep. That's the best teaching is, one thing at a time, one new concept at a time, building on what they already know, right?
Exactly. So, well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I believe you. So,
that's Pestalozzi. That's old school pedagogy, and that's what a lot of great teaching is based upon, is just introducing one new concept at a time. Not that will make the student successful and be able to continue to build, but just throwing them into the wolves and saying, here's a G pentatonic scale, you got to do swing rhythms and you got to do the chord changes too. Like that's overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll share this icebreaker, which I think speaks to this really specifically. So this is an icebreaker that I do, where I'll ask people to do it's a sequence. So first I'll say, and I give clear instructions, and you can have all the kids in your class do this at the same time in a live classroom if you like. So I'll start with play quarter notes at a given tempo and just play on one note, and then improvise that. Within that, improvise, right?
Sure.
Which is kind of a head scratcher, right? So, and I might even say, we're just going to play open A. We're going to all play it together, and within that, you can improvise. Ready, go. So they're just doing this. And so they get, they can figure out that, well, all I can improvise with is my volume, my articulation, maybe the bow direction, right? And you say, okay, this is great. And they're kind of looking at you like, this is boring, right? Okay.
Right.
Now let's do it with two notes. Now you can choose between open D and open A. So same tempo applies. There's no rests. You can't change the tempo. You can't change the rhythm, right? So very clear instructions. So then they're going to do something like... Then you can do this for 20 seconds, whatever you want. So then you say, okay, so D major scale. Everybody knows the D major scale in this class, right? And maybe you only know it in 2 strings. So then we're going to confine to that. We're going to say only where you know the D major scale on 2 strings. And we're going to do the same rhythmic duration we just did, same rules, but you can pick any notes in the D major scale. Another intermediate step would say like maybe 3 notes or 4 notes, but we're going to try with the D major scale. So you can do this for maybe 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. The next step, one of the things that I like to do is to introduce atonality as soon as possible, because when people are in well, it just opens something up. So now your students may not be comfortable with that. They may.
Yeah. I was going to say, my chamber orchestra, we're working on the Barber Serenade right now. And a lot of them haven't played a lot of contemporary music. And they're like, Dr. Laux, just sounds just like random stuff going. I'm like, hold on, you got like it takes a while to get used to it. It takes a while to start to understand what the composer was trying to do. I mean, Barber, it's Opus 1, but it's so great. It's awesome music, and you can kind of hear the the direction of the phrasing and all kinds of cool stuff in there. But my students are thinking these are all just random notes right now, you know. So, but yes, it takes a while, and if you start them why they only know the D major scale, and that's great.
Yeah. And so for students that are up for it, or if they're able, then I would say, okay, now you can play any flats, any sharps, any naturals, all 12 notes. So that same exercise we did before. Then you might have a student playing this kind of line, right? Depending on their level, obviously,
Sure.
we're always going to tailor it to whatever their ability is. But also, just a side note that if you have all students, like 40 students in a high school orchestra, doing this exercise that I just showed you together, it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing because there's the unifying aspects that are happening, which kind of makes the harmony random, and you can actually really feel the music because it's like, well, no, let's everybody play together. Let's everybody attack and release together, and you can even I even do conducted group improvisations with just this kind of thing where we're just conducting a note and it's a free note, and so yeah, as you said, like the kids will open up to this, their ears to it.
Yes. Yes.
So then the next thing I'll do is I'll say, well, let's introduce rests. So going back to the tonal situation, maybe we'll do, you can either play a quarter note or a rest. Rest. Rest, rest, rest. You can do that for a while. So again, each one of these can be done with an individual student, or they can make a submission of this on a video and like turn it in, or it can be done in the classroom, whether it's the tonal or the non-tonal one. Then at the next point, I might say, because they're getting gradually more and more comfortable, maybe just with this idea of choosing things.
Right.
So I might say, well, let's do it with triplets. We're going to do. Something like this, triplets, right? Or I might say, now let's introduce two different rhythmic durations. So quarter notes or eighth notes and or rests. So 2, 3, rest. So this kind of thing, having them improvise like this. Then I might say, I'll continue to toggle back and forth between using 12 notes or using a major scale tonality.
Okay.
So you get comfortable with both. And then at that point, I'll probably say, okay, this time you can change the tempo whenever you want. You can use any rhythmic duration you want, and it can be any note you want. So at that point, then you could have the whole class do this together, or that one student. So, and it could be. It could be anything, right?
Yeah,
actually,
right.
It's actually now it's free improvisation. So this is the Icebreaker, which gives students from this very like choose one or two, and then all the way to this kind of free place. And the only purpose of it is to facilitate the creative process. That's the only purpose. It's not, a lot of people then they second guess it or they put caveats on it. They'll say like, well, but I thought you were going to teach me how to play chord progressions, or I really wanted to learn how to play a song. It's like, that's a separate thing. We're going to do that
skill.
too. But the creative process, it's so important to nurture this. So I don't know how that strikes you, but.
No, I think that's exactly it because, again, a lot of us we are teaching, some rote things, but it's, I play, you play, or it's familiar songs or a melody that they already know. And I think it's important for kids to get away from what they know and be able to, improvise where they're composing as they perform. That's the skill. And then, getting away from the written page too. I mean, I have a lot of students who adamantly almost refuse to play without something in front of them, written page. And there's a whole world of music out there, as you know, that they're missing out on, and they're limiting themselves, it's just not, it's unfortunate, but starting this when they're young as beginners is the key.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this creative piece then later on can be married back into a more like functional situation.
Mm-hmm.
So later on, if you're playing over a bluegrass tune or over a pop groove, and once the kids are, or any of us, once we're comfortable with thinking about the overlying structure and limits that we put to help us feel more free creating, then we can adapt them to that situation.
Yeah.
So I'll try to see if I can find a loop here, actually. Yeah, so this is from Dua Lipa, which is a popular song called Don't Start Now. And I made this on my loop pedal, actually just with my violin.
Cool.
So everything you're hearing is the loops that I make on my with my violin. And it's that popular song by Dua Lipa. I think I have. Actually, I just happen to have the sheet music here, so you'll recognize if I play it. Yeah. Everybody probably recognized that, right?
Yeah, I've heard it before.
A couple of years ago. It's a pop song. So if we have a track like this, one thing, I'll just show you a rhythm exercise real quick.
Cool.
What I like to do with the bow is to get it going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then what I like to do is I like to teach people to kind of mute their strings really easily by just letting all of your fingers just kind of fall over the string lightly, not hard, not pressing, trying to get a pitch. Right. And then you lighten up your bow and you get this kind of, this kind of ghosting sound.
Right, the ghost.
And so to practice for subdivision, because eventually, if I don't know if everybody will be able to see my bow, but eventually you could have your bow moving at the 16th note level, and you could play everything with the bow moving like that. Like eventually, not that I would necessarily do that all the time, but it's useful.
But it's a cool technique, and people that can't see the bow, basically he's just choosing which notes he wants to put his finger down to create the pitch, and otherwise it's just kind of resting on there, giving him the ghost. But his bow is moving in 16th notes the whole time.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool style.
And obviously, probably obvious to you, to a lot of the listeners, and to yourself, is like, we're always teaching subdivision is such an important part of teaching any orchestra class, maybe the most important, hearing the subdivision, playing the subdivision, internalizing subdivision. So this is forcing us to do it with our body physically. Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. In my classroom, the S word is subdivide. We call it the S word.
Exactly. So we can practice this. We'll go at the 8th note level for now, but we can do, 8 played and then 8 muted. So it would look like down, up, 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 down. We can go 4 to 4, mute 2, 3, 4, play, mute 2, 3, 4, play. Then we can go to 2. And then at that point is where it starts getting tricky, because we start playing rhythms that are, I guess, I'm not even sure what the right word is, but they're somehow syncopated. So I'll show
Yeah,
you what I mean.
down bow and up bow. The up bow would be the offbeat, right? So
Yes.
yeah, right.
So if we start leaning into the offbeat with certain types of rhythms, that's when it really breaks down. So I think, like, for
Yeah,
example, this one I think people would have trouble with, which would be like down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up, up. So I'm playing,
yeah,
down, up, but usually people will have a hard time moving their bow on that third eighth note.
right. Yeah, but that would be, I mean, that would be useful in a lot of instances, not just uh, with the loop that you're using, but even in Mozart or whatever. I mean, anything, any kind of educational music or anything you'd be working on in class. That's a great strategy.
Yeah, and so this is something that so kids you can practice these subdividing rhythms just by themselves. You can also, while you're doing these, and I do a lot of these on my play-alongs,
Mm-hmm.
and I put a video on the. Thanks for letting me share a video on.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing that very soon with on the Orchestra Teacher YouTube channel. So I appreciate you contributing, and we'll be doing like a little intro to talk to you about all about what it is that he's doing, and then we'll just have Chris go to town with that video. It's really cool, play along and just getting some different styles in there. It's really awesome.
Yeah, and so a lot of the play-alongs that are over at my YouTube channel, they're just this, where the kids can just play along and do these exercises. But these are also exercises that teachers can create themselves, or you don't have to. You can use my play-alongs.
Right. Well, just real quick, especially during the pandemic, I know that you created tons of these things. How many do you have on your channel right now?
Hundreds, several. I think there's close to 300 that are just play-alongs, and it's all levels.
Right. I know you kind of specify that. You say, grades 5 to 8 or whatever. And obviously, if they're just starting out and they're, a senior in high school, they might need to start with those grades 5 to 8 ones to really, start that creative process and feel comfortable.
Yeah. And a lot of times they're play-alongs like, where I'll be like, okay, play after me. You play, blah, 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 starting on D. You play, right? F sharp. F sharp. So there's a couple elements there. One is giving them enough time to hear it and process it and start, right? Not playing too long of a phrase, so it needs to be short enough. And then I like to give the starting note for people a lot of times. But that's kind of how they work. And then I tailor them to different levels of ability.
Yes, that's awesome.
But I do a lot also with just the grooving exercise. So just having them play along with these different grooves where they're playing the whole time. They don't stop. They just keep the bow moving. So, and I might, so just play this rhythm with me, practice this. And I'll ask them to sway left, right, sway your body from side to side, stand up if you want.
Yeah.
Now, but beyond that, I'll also, going back to that first icebreaker that I shared with you, beyond that, I will instruct or prompt students to make their own decisions. Without having to play back for me anything. So one way that might look is I might say, okay, you're going to be improvising, but I'm going to tell you the rules. So we're going to start with long bows. It's going to be like, pick any note from D major and play a long bow with me. Ready, play. You're holding that long note. It's not the same note as my note, right? And now we're going to switch to another note in D major. Play it. Right? And some of my grooves are going to be more lending the C sharp to the
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And if it was, I could also say, well, let's use any of the notes in the pentatonic scale, and then we can put them up on the chalkboard, right? But in that case, it's like you're picking the note, and this is when you're playing it. It's not just play whatever you want, but this is like you're playing it right now, and that piece of scaffolding makes a huge difference. And then I might speed it up. I say, okay, now we're going to play twice as long. So play. Now change. Now change. Now change. Now twice as fast. Now, again, for me, the
Mm-hmm.
way that I would help the students win on this situation is I would put it either on the chalkboard or actually on a piece of note paper on their stands. I would give them maybe that pentatonic scale in the range where they're going to play it, not just the roots. I would not put the letter names. I would put the dots if they read dots,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
because I feel like that's gonna help accelerate the process for them and give them some security in it.
Right.
It's like, here's the 6 notes. They're in dots. You can see, and they're just in the range that you know. Whether for D major pentatonic on the violin, that actually starts on A. So that would be like writing out the scale in extended range for me because I'm an advanced player,
Sure.
or even if somebody else, you could put it up in higher positions. I usually stay in first position. But again, if it's somebody that only plays on 2 strings, let's say, then it might just be here with 4th finger on the E.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they can choose from. If they have that in front of them and they're looking at those notes, then they don't have to, they're not going to freak out and be like, I can't remember the scale.
Yeah.
And
No, that's
we
the
don't
way
want
to do
anybody
it.
freaking out. We
A
just
little bit
want success.
Yeah. You give them that framework and keep them within that, and then you can tell them it's like, well, you can play any of these notes. Why don't you try some on the G or the E or whatever if they don't have that range,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, when we did that, I would give them the dots. I would just put that one limited scale. I would kind of just write it out as dots, diagonally, like, and maybe coming back down as well. I'd make it as easy as possible for them to see it. And then I get more specific. I say, well, let's play just 2 notes, and let's do this rhythm, da da, so.
Cool.
So, and then I would give more and more kinds of instructions like this until, again, they get free and, or they feel free with it, right? Whether it's in this tonal setting or a non-tonal setting. And then I would continue to give them more and more instructions, like use different techniques like bouncing bows, long bows, pizzicato, harmonics, whatever you want. Use different emotions, like, something sad, something happy, and then more and more musical elements, like, elements of phrasing, elements of rhythmic duration. But the thing, when I say that it gets married back to this song, because it still comes back to having parameters to help us make choices, to create improvisation, rather than just feeling like, okay, so make up something. Are you brilliant or not?
Right. That freaks kids out, and they're like, then they shut down, and then they don't want to do it. So you really do have to think through it with some intent and with some sequence. And I think that what you're doing is awesome, and how you do it is great. We know a lot of people know that you have workshops that you do. And they've been all over the place lately because of COVID, and I know have you done some virtual, but do you have anything coming up this summer that teachers can maybe take advantage of, or students even?
Yeah. I'm probably going to do something in Asheville for 2 weeks in July this summer. It'll probably be smaller events, but I have had some teachers come join me. Asheville, North Carolina, not too far from where you live.
Right.
So yeah, just reach out to me, Chris at christianhouse.com. If you want to ask about workshops, we do a lot of virtual stuff. We're also now doing pay what you want, including free live Zoom classes for classrooms. So which means that literally, if you're a teacher with a middle school or high school orchestra classroom, you can literally just send me an email and say, these are the times and days when my class meets. Will you come and teach our kids for 45 minutes? And the answer is yes, we will. I just need teachers to literally just reach. And it's a pay what you want. It's totally donation. I do thank Diodario for giving us some sponsorship.
Great.
But basically, we're trying to create this thing because if, like, let's say, Dr. Laux, if you were to say, like, well, I have this class, a high school class, Fridays at 10 a.m., And I think that they would benefit from a 45-minute play along class.
Yeah.
You're going to bring me in on Zoom on the screen in your classroom. Or if kids are home, then you're going to give them the Zoom link for that, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you decide, okay, we're going to try this. So you let me know, okay, so it's going to be 2 weeks from now, Friday at 10 a.m. Then what I do is I open it up to everybody else in our database. And I say, well, we're doing this class at 10 a.m. on Friday. So anybody else who wants to come, come. And because if we have enough people that comes, then somebody donates, $200. Somebody else says, I can't afford anything. It's free. Somebody
Sure.
else puts in $10, $20. And so that's how we're trying to make this happen.
That's great. That's great. Well, that's an awesome service. And, again, just getting kids to think about what they do differently, getting excited. And I know for me, some of my students who are the most creative and the best improvisers and the ones that want to do this aren't always my top players, as far as all state level or whatever. They love doing this. They love, this is music to them. And they like the orchestra setting, but they also want to be able to do this kind of creative things on the side or on their own or even in class. So
I like to say that creativity is the ultimate equalizer. Like I remember when I went to Delaware Hayes High School back in, which is near Columbus, Ohio. And I remember I was the concertmaster in my high school orchestra, but the kid who sat last chair, second violin, that kid was creative. He would bring in tapes of his own music that he was singing on 4 tracks back then in the 80s.
yeah, sure.
Right? I was jealous of that kid. And so, and in a good way, right? Like that was part of what inspired me to join a rock band and go on my whole trajectory. So creativity is an equalizer where, every kid can feel that their voice is valid and that they're, even if they don't have the chops, so to say.
Yeah.
But
well,
so
I think a lot of teachers might be inspired by, your story too, because you're like kind of a prodigy and you play. I know you were very young. You played with the Columbus Symphony. So you were classically trained. Were you Suzuki?
Yeah, I was Suzuki trained from age 5. Then I studied with Michael Davis in high school, and then that's why I went to OSU to continue my studies with him. And I actually had a full-time contract with Columbus Pro Musica.
Yeah, it's a great chamber orchestra.
Yeah, it's a legit chamber orchestra. I had a full-time contract with them when I was 18, and then later on, I was offered a full-time sub job with the Columbus Symphony, and I played, I played the Mendelssohn for the young concerto kids thing in high school, all that. I was very serious, classical.
Right.
Yeah, people may not know it now. They may just assume he doesn't really, but I love classical music. Love it.
Yeah.
And but on these play along classes when we do them, my thing is that the kids will be playing the entire time. So that's one of the things about our play along classes, and when I structure them, it's kind of this idea I have in the back of my mind is just whatever we do, it's fine, but I want the kids to be playing the entire time, and that's one of my thoughts in this whole Zoom thing is like, well, how can we get kids to just be playing more?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's also, one more thing of great teaching is, having the kids playing as much as possible. And a lot of us fall into the talking too much thing, and kids aren't there to hear us talk. They're there to play, So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time out to do it. Again, there'll be a video coming out on the Orchestra Teacher YouTube channel that features Christian House, and obviously there'll be links and everything to his channel, so you can check out all the amazing resources that he has available. But it's an honor to have you here. I appreciate it very much. And teachers, if you haven't worked with Christian or seen his work, definitely check it out. I think it could be very inspiring, eye-opening for a lot of you, and just something that will also do the same for your teachers or for your students. So
thank you so much, Dr. Laux. Charles, thanks so much for having me, man. And
absolutely.
I really appreciate everything that you do for your students and all of your listeners. I mean, I just can't say enough how much I respect and appreciate and admire what you're doing, all of you, and especially for you, Dr. Laps, for supporting all the teachers in doing that as well, in addition to your full-time gig and everything you do. I know as a dad, and it's really humbling and inspiring. So I appreciate you. Thanks.
Well, thank you again, and for everybody out there, we will catch you next time on the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Thank you for listening. For additional resources and more information, please visit the Orchestra Teacher website at www.orchestrateacher.net.